Okay, good morning and welcome to my channel. It is early today in Houston, Texas. Today we're going to be talking about Section 811, and there's a lot of information out there, and I think that over time it's become a little bit, as I always say, convoluted. You know, you got decades and decades of information stacked, so people really want to know what it is. How does it work for a tenant? How does it work for the landlord? And let's take a look at a real application. In fact, this is the real application. And this is going to be compliments of the great state of Louisiana. And I'm, in fact, from that state, East Baton Rouge Parish, for those of you that are Cajun. Anyways, so we're going to go through this application. Now, most of you think to yourself, well, you know, it's just an application. I can read that at home. Certainly you could. But like anything else that's created by any city government, HUD, or the feds, you can be rest assured that inside this application are going to be questions that are asked in a very clever way. And of course, if you don't give the right answers, then you end up with nothing. I've already looked at this and I already see lots of holes that can be shot through it. So, Section 811 is first and foremost a PRA, is a permanent supportive housing. Anytime you hear the word PSH or permanent supportive housing, it would indicate to you that they're damn well going to pay nearly all of your rent and sometimes most of the utilities. That's a lot different than receiving a Section 8 voucher, what most of you might know as a housing choice voucher. The reason it's different is with a normal voucher, you're paying 30% of your income while the housing authority picks up the other 70. With Section 811, it's a good chance that you pay nothing. All right, so there's a big difference there. So it falls under the PSH program offering for rental assistance and supportive services for people between the ages of 18 and 61. For those of you that are under 24, between 18 and 24, if you don't have a disability, then it's especially hard to get any type of voucher. In that arena, I would always advise consulting with somebody, whether it's me or somebody else, because they still believe that you're young and you're capable. However, if you have a disability, then we can make the program likely work for you. All right, so let's go into long-term disabilities. There's a lot of ideas about that as well. Um, HUD has set out a very specific set of levels for disabilities, and you do not, and let me repeat this three times, okay? You do not need to have a Social Security disability check, a ruling by a judge saying you're disabled. It's simply the housing authority issuing you a piece of paper that you take to a medical professional, whether he has a PhD, whether he's a therapist, or if he's just a licensed counselor, saying that yes, in fact, you're being treated for a particular illness, whether it be physical or mental, and that this will be sustained over a longer period of time. The longer period of time they're usually looking for is over a year. Now, because HUD has been sued by individuals in the past over the action of disability, there are certain things that are near guaranteed to grant you a Section 811 voucher, if it's available, if you have these particular problems. So when this lady sued, she had degenerative disc disease. For most of you men and women who have herniated a disc, if you have uh, that disc disease, then that's an automatic qualifier. It's almost impossible for them to reject that. If you've been diagnosed with one of many forms of bipolar, then that usually is going to be an automatic qualifier that usually cannot be disputed. Now, there's a whole laundry list, and I'm not going to get into disability specifically. I'm just telling you what the U.S. courts have handed down. So if she won, you likely win as well. Now, and do not take that as interpret that as legal advice. I am not an attorney, all right? And I am not a certified HUD consultant. I am a Section 8 consultant. It's more of an invention of my own nature after 20 years of doing this and reading over 1 million pages in manuals and operations. So let's move on to the other parts. One thing you're going to notice down here is if you're long-term disabilities who may have the difficulty living successfully in the community and may be homeless or institutionalized without supports. So those, you know, getting out of prison, out of jail, those that have had a mental break and had to be committed to a psychiatric facility or other something similar to that would be a version of this. Now, it's not limited to that, obviously. It's limited to anybody that meets those ages that has a provable disability. Now, we're going to move on. What are the 811 PRA requirements? To be eligible for 811 PR, the household must include at least one person with a disability, And after reviewing over 10,000 cases personally through my business, which is section8consulting.com, there's always somebody in the home that has a disability to some degree, all right? The person who has a disability is currently receiving Medicaid services or the Ryan White services. Now, the minute I see the words Ryan White, that would indicate to me they may have HIV or AIDS, all right? Now, the Medicaid, that could be just about anybody. Now, you should understand that's the great state of Louisiana's idea of how you do it. It can be a little slightly different in every state, and it may not require those. It also says in number two to be extremely low income. Let's be very clear about extremely low income. In most parts of the country, that's going to be 5,000 to 18,000. Pushing the upper echelon per single person would be around 24,000. But I'm going to exclude certain states and cities from that because they're so expensive, like San Francisco Bay, Los Angeles, Orange County, New York, Bronx, Queens, Long Island. So if you live in a really super expensive place, don't consider yourself extremely low income until we've actually viewed and see what the AMI is, which is your area medium income. Now, typically, I think New York, you can make 66,000 still be considered damn near homeless. All right, that's why I'm saying that the 24,000, 5,000 to about 24,000 is the typical parts of the U.S. So how do I apply if I think I'm eligible? Well, as you can see down here, a reasonable combination will be made for completing applications for assistance by completing and calling such and such number. Now, obviously, this is for the state of Louisiana. So, in your own city, the best way to really just get the information without having to haggle and deal with a closed housing authority that's not answering phones is just directly to call HUD in Washington, D.C. Hey, you know what? I live in Chicago, Illinois, and I just like the number where I can complete an application for Section 811. The housing authority is closed or whatever it may be. That would be your direct path, and of course, HUD itself, being the feds, would be able to give you that number. And then bullet point number two, while we hope to answer for all questions, we begin the process of your application long as you answer all the questions. It's important you always complete all questions. Do not give generic answers. Don't blow it off. You need to go through it and then try to interpret what they're trying to ask from you. They'll ask for verifying documents, and they're going to give you examples of that. Looked at as not the end of the world. A lot of times they ask for almost impossible things from you, okay? You're like, who the hell would even have this kind of documentation? Look, when they reject you, you can appeal it. On appeal, typically they're going to give you a different set of documentation. It's much easier. So you understand that the way they're setting this up is to automatically disqualify most people because they know that most people, when disqualified, will likely just give up. You see how that worked out? That's part of how this game works. And I always call it a game because it's never designed to be easy. Now, moving on from that. Once you appeal, then they'll give you something simpler to provide documentation. Expect it to be red tape and a little bit of bullshit. That's always how it works out. Bullet point number three. You cannot be found eligible for PRA, Section 811 PRA, or offered a unit until we have completed the application and all supported documentation. In other words, it sounds more like, let's reword that, nothing's going to happen until we stall just long enough. Welcome to the world of HUD and Section 8, So the income verification be required before a household can receive it. In most states, let's consider the state of Texas, which I currently live in. You can go down to Workforce Solutions, which is owned by the Food Stamp Office, which you give them a driver's license or a Social Security card. They print out your annual income in the state of Texas. Now, that may work very differently in every state, but if you type in income verification, you'll find some city or county office you can go to, present an ID, and they'll print out what they believe that you've made for the year inside the state. That's what they're looking for. And other, if you filed your taxes and other things like that, or you have proof of Social Security disability, and you have accurate records, that might be sufficient. So let's not try to start gathering all our paperwork just yet because the rules may be very much different for each city. So where do you send a completed application? This would be a useless part for me to put up for you guys because this is going to be Louisiana. But typically they're going to have mail, fax. You can do it by mail, fax, email. And so you don't, anytime you're coached into doing a application over the phone, do not do that, ever. There's no proof that anything's been done. You don't know if the person accepting the application is acting in an ethical manner. And then, of course, again, we roll back to there's no proof. You could sit for a year, call back, well, who are you? And I've seen that happen to a lot of clients. You need to keep a record. If you mail it, it must be certified or with tracking number. Please hold your housing authorities accountable. If you're doing an email record, keep the email. If you're faxing, keep a record. Otherwise, if they dispute it and say, oh, well, we purged you off the list because we had no evidence of you being there, you talking to Sally a year ago, so don't get yourself in trouble, okay? So whatever happens after you submit your application, let's say 30 days. Look, guys, let's not be fruitless. It could happen as early as a week. It could happen as late as 90 days, and depending on just how horrific the housing authority is, how understaffed, how many are working from home, it could take quite a while. You should anticipate nothing but pain and misery when trying to go through the process. That's what it's designed to do. By the time you each the end of the race, there'll only be a few people straggling into through the little rope, and you've won the competition. It's designed intentionally that way. So for those of you that are persistent, hell or hot water, that you're going to get this, then you will. That's what it comes down to. Strictly persistence. That, hey, I'm not accepting any crazy answer out of your mouth, no matter how rude you get with me, how hard you make this for me. I'm still going to complete the process, and you get it. My clients that are like that, actually, some of my clients have mental issues that force them in a position of being highly persistent. They're often very successful. The very disability that they have is what compels them almost into anger to completely finish the process. I wish I could get my ordinary applicants to think in those terms, in that mental way that, all right, I feel like I'm getting burned here, so I'm going to be super persistent until I get this. That's the attitude you have to have, okay? This is not like driving through McDonald's. It's not Burger King, my way, right away. You're not going to get it your way, okay? You're going to get it when they want to give it to you. That's how they roll. All right, so going on from there, Section 8 Project Rental Assistance Application. You complete such and such. They do have notations there. And we're going to take a look. So, the typical stuff: name, number, address, city, state, zip, blah, blah, blah. Make sure anytime you give phone numbers, give as many as you can. Grandma, your aunt, everybody. Only give out numbers to people. Let me give you an example. When I was younger, I always gave my grandmother's number out. Why? Because she had the same phone number 50 years, and I knew she would answer. So if somebody needed to contact me, it would happen. If you're one of these people that you never know if you can pay your phone bill or you're going to change your phone number every week, put somebody's number down there that's responsible. Same thing with the email. Use an email that you consistently know that you're going to be able to maintain over a period of time. Do not give out some email where you can't remember the password from one week to the next, okay? If they cannot reach you by email, phone, or mail, then you're going to get purged, okay? And nobody wants that. So, sorry, my ear is scratching me today. Let's take a look. So you have alternative information. Please take an opportunity to give any alternatives, including friends, family, and neighbors on there. Okay, take every opportunity, please, guys. So here's where it's going to get interesting. We're going to talk about demographics. Just going to talk about male and female, gay, straight, homeless, not homeless, a little bit of everything. What color are you? Let me tell you something. All of these answers matter. You may think they're generic, like you're filling out a census report for the U.S. government. It's not. Checking certain boxes is going to give you a great deal of preference, and checking some boxes is going to give you nothing. All right? You only get one shot at this. If you don't answer and give them the answers they're looking for, what will happen to you is simply this. You'll be at the end of the line with everybody else. For those of you that check some of the correct boxes, you'll end up at the very front of the line. So number one, are you homeless? Look, that represents 1/3 of what's going to happen as far as you getting housing. Okay, if you are homeless, sleeping outside, sleeping in a homeless shelter, sleeping in your car, then you can get an immense amount of a big jump on the list. All right. Now, if you're not, it's not gonna ruin it for you. I'm just saying that if you've been sleeping in the car, you don't have a mortgage to a home, you don't have a lease that's been filed with a corporate landlord, then by all technical reasons you really are homeless. So it comes down to an ethical answer. Do you want to persuade your answer or not? Because it represents really about 30% of where you're going to land with this. Are you chronically homeless? Now, one thing they like to hear about is those of you, let's just say that we go into a story of, look, you know what, I've been on and off the streets for 10 years. For the past 4 years, I have been sleeping in the car. Prior to that, I was homeless a minimum of 4 times over 10 years. Chronic means, essentially, that this isn't the first time it happens to you, but the federal rules make it interesting. So, what if I was homeless 4 years, but over that 10-year period, this was the second time this has happened to you? Disqualified. Oh, well, what if I was homeless for 4 years from at this point now, and this is the third time it's happened to me? Disqualified. The magic number is four, children, and ladies and gentlemen, not children. So, 4 times. In 10 years, I've been homeless 4 or more times, and I've been currently sleeping in the car a minimum of 4 years as of this point, right now. If you don't give them that answer, you're disqualified. Okay? They designed this stuff to do just that. So you have a real person sleeping under the bridge, been there 4 years, his feet's falling off, can't walk, missing an eyeball, and it's been going on for nearly 10 years. But unfortunately, has only been chronically homeless 3 times. Well, that's tough luck. You get a coupon for $5, and then good luck under the bridge. You see, this is what happens when you let people design, when you let people that sit in Congress that have chandeliers and big paychecks design convoluted applications and stupid rules that mean nothing. So I think all of you know how I feel about this. So, anyways, if you can get homeless, and in addition to, it's not simply good enough to be homeless. You also must be chronically homeless, meaning 4 or more greater times. So homeless 3 years. In addition to that, over a 10-year period, homeless 4 times. Otherwise, you don't get it. Okay. Race voluntarily. So I have spoken this briefly. So they removed a lot of people from the racial aspect or giving any preference to that. However, if you are American Indian, and I don't mean any color American Indian, you can be African American Indian, you can be Indian India, as long as you're naturalized. Here, you could be Mexican Indian, you can be white Indian, doesn't matter. As long as you have a recognized tribe in your bloodstream, and those Indians were here in the U.S., then you would get a small amount of preference. Is it enough to tip the scale? Probably not. So, and also they've included African American again as well, okay, as a minority race. So it gives you a small amount of preference, but it's not going to work any miracles just because you're African American or Indian. It just helps a little. And then, of course, you have voluntary select. Now, look, checking Hispanic does have some abilities. When there's special funding, then they can help Spanish community. They can also help the African American community when they set aside specific types of federal funding. So don't just eliminate these because you don't think they're not going to do that much for you. If you are mixed, also, let's talk about that. Biracial, white and black, white and Mexican, white and Asian, Asian black, so on and so forth. You see my point? If you're connected in any way, Spanish, Indian, or African American, and any blend of that you can prove, and you're from the U.S. naturalized, then this would be, give you a few bonus points. Citizenship, that should be obvious. However, they're loosening the rules to take in immigrants, but the immigrant that would be coming here, whether legal or illegally, must have an open case. Sometimes people do arrive in the country because they're under threat from countries where there are severe problems, okay? And sometimes, in true, it may be that they are here not legally, but, in most cases, sometimes they have good cases as to why that may be here illegally. They can't wait out the process. So it's not always what's been sensationalized on TV, that everybody is just somebody that just came from Mexico and stuff like that. We have to consider cases on a case-by-case nature before we doom people to not be able to do it. So, if you are here illegally and you're attempting to do the appropriate thing to file your paperwork and you have a day in court, then it would be applicable that you try to get this program, especially if you have a disability. Genders don't matter, but you can select them anyways. Your veteran status does matter. United States government, since you served your country, and I'm going to tell you real quickly, thank you for your service immensely. For all of you, whether you're 90 and served in World War II, or if you served in Vietnam, as my uncle did, or you served recently. Appreciate your service. So with the veteran status, Section 811 can work in lieu of HUD bash. So you wouldn't want to type into Google HUD and then BASH. HUD bash would work in these two in a combination. So not going to tell you, it's a wonderful program, HUD bash. However, it's a lot of people under the impression that HUD bash has special powers. It does not. And it can be just as convoluted as any other program. However, I would urge you guys to utilize it if you can because they pay more rent than the average voucher. You see? Now, moving on from that, is the head of household between the ages of 18 and 61. What they're really meaning to say is whoever is going to be the applicant. Let me tell you something. When you organize an application, whoever has the most mental, physical problems, whoever's the veteran and oldest should be the one, the primary person applying. Do not put the most healthiest person as the primary, okay? So let's think about that logically. Now, you young adults that are aging out of care, there are special systems in place for you, okay? So a lot of you have been in foster care and so on, and then of course the minute you turn 18, you're thrown out the door with a suitcase and you have nothing. And so there are programs out there, including 504, Section 504 for those of you with students or disabilities. You can also utilize Section 811. If you're having problems with that, I would suggest email me, and then I can get you some more information, or if you'd like, if you can afford to, you can set up a consult with me, all right? So there are options out there for you other than homelessness. We want you to succeed. It especially hurts me here when I see young adults have to be put on the street in such a terrible manner. All right. Accessibility. Does a member of your household require the following? Yes or no is the question. So wheelchair, no steps, modification, few steps, roll-in shower, hearing disability, grabs bars, and handrails. Look, guys, I got a lot of guys that are trying to manipulate this. Look, if you do not have a real disability, if you have a disability but it doesn't require accommodations, please stop taking these apartments from people that literally do not have legs. That is wildly inappropriate. I understand some of you are trying to game the system. I will not support you in your effort to do that. If you have real problems, I think that's fantastic. Well, I don't think that's fantastic, but I mean, I think we need to think about this logically. There's a limited amount of this, all right? And you may have a qualifying disability, but it doesn't mean that you need to have handicap plates and a 5,000 square foot room when you in fact don't have a wheelchair. You see my point? So act reasonably. We have to get everybody into housing in the appropriate way. So you want to add those modifications there. And let me tell you something. If you're not prepared to prove those things to the worker, then they might disqualify you. And once they catch you in a little lie like that, it could go very badly for you, which means they're going to tell that you're trying to manipulate the system, and then it goes badly. And trust me, it's already a manipulated system, which I find very humorous, that if we attempted to manipulate a system that's already rigged, you see how that works out. So, and they're going to ask you to explain, and then of course they're going to probably want a medical physician's report with that, or one of the two. And then they're going to go on to number 11. Are you currently in a nursing home? ICF, DD. Now those acronyms change again, city to city, state to state. And so I don't want you guys that are going to be on end of life stages cases trying to do Section 811. There's different programs for you other than the Section 811. So this is not designed to be really a nursing home setup unless you're fully cognitive and you're still able to somewhat care for yourself. And we're going to go back to demographics, and so you'll list all your household applicants. Let me caution you guys. Now I realize that people get in trouble, broke the law, got a felony, this and that. You cannot utilize this program if you have been convicted of trying to deal with methamphetamine or you're a sexual offender. Any other thing can be worked with. Those two things are not acceptable, all right? They're not going to put somebody in there. Also, the third is domestic violence. If they suspect that you abuse people, if they suspect that you have anything to do with the meth stuff, you know what I'm talking about, and the other that I mentioned, then it's just not going to work out for you, okay? I apologize, but it is what it is, and really I'm not going to apologize for that. So you want to put all that down there. Everybody you intend on having the home. Do not try to secretly move somebody else. You violate your HAP contract, they'll put you out, and you'll be banned for a period of 5 years to life. Almost like a prison sentence. Do you or another household member require a live-in aid or a live-in caretaker? Now, you would presume, by the way they framed that question, that if you answered yes, they're going to help you. That does not mean that, okay? What they're asking, the reason they're asking is because they may consider accommodation to give you an additional room. If you're unfortunate and live in places like California, they consider your living room an additional room. So they're happy to come hang a shower curtain, and that will be the additional room. So be careful when you get clever about getting requesting an extra room. Now, the live-in aid part, how that works out is if it happens to be a live-in aid or a care aid, then they would have to appropriate a secondary room. Now, that would be under extraordinary circumstance and likely filed with Medicaid, Medicare, or county health. And I'm not going to get deeply into that because it's quite sophisticated, the process they go through. So, we're going to move on. Down here, subsection disability. Here we go again. In order to help you access any needed supports, it is helpful for us to know what type of disability the qualifying member has. They're not asking for you to tell your complete oral history of problems. Nobody cares about that. And I don't mean that in a rude way. I'm just saying they're not going to listen to you 40 minutes bitch and moan about every little thing, every toenail that's ever fell out of place. They don't have the time, and if you ever dealt with housing authority, they'll shut you down fast for that. They want to know your diagnosis so they can either accept or deny you right then and there. They are terrible at actually empathy. I actually care. Most of the housing authority employees do not want to spend 40 minutes hearing your life story. You need to hear it from me because if you hear it from them, you're really going to be in tears when you leave the building. So we're going to move on and take a look here. Intellectual disability. For those of you with learning disabilities, it doesn't need to be just severe. Some people have autism, which is on the lighter side. And then you may have Down syndrome, an 80 scale. So any of those, as long as it's a learning developmental delay, and there's a record of it. Mental illness. Mental illness does not cover a broad spectrum. You could presume that bipolar, schizophrenia, if they impact you, then that would be fine. If you're just suffering from some depression for a couple of weeks, that's not going to get it. And a lot can be said about that. Now, if you acquired one of these type of disabilities, whether intellectual, mental, or physical, before the age of 22, you automatically qualify. So if there's a record already of this happening to you before the age of 22, then they give you some latitude because you've been suffering from it. And then, of course, they give the option of other. Look, checking other just means they're just going to disqualify you for it, okay? It's just a great opportunity to check no. No, I don't need help. So just watch yourself with that. Do you or someone in your household receive any of the following services? And then, what's going to happen here is it's going to depend on your city. And so these are all programs most of you are not familiar with because it's related to Louisiana. But Y and Right service is going to be for HOPWA, HOPWA, so HIV and AIDS. Or you may hear things like WABA, which is domestic violence in women. Or you may be receiving other tax credit programs for your children, or you may be receiving county health services, mental health services, and other things. So this will change. These are all kind of Louisiana programs with some. And you see, if you're using Ryan White for HIV and AIDS, they do require documentation of proof. A lot of these don't even have proofs. And you see they do include a pure Medicaid. And then you look down here, do you have extremely low income? And so they do afford you a chart. Now, Louisiana, this is extremely low income. People from state don't make a lot of money. That should be clear. When you're making $9,000 a year, that's nothing. It's air. However, I also realize that most of you are on a fixed income with low Social Security checks, or survivor benefits, or Social Security disability. Let me make you guys feel a little bit better that are on that fixed income. Okay, I've done this for a long time, and I can tell you, somebody receiving a $1,500 Social Security disablement, I've only seen it happen 3 times. The average payment is between $800 and $900. The lowest I've ever seen was $200. It's likely because that person only worked a shorter period of time in his life. So if you're receiving around $700 to $900, that's pretty ordinary. The most extraordinary that I've ever seen was $3,500, and that was because of a very loose loophole in New Jersey. A select group of people throughout Jersey were able to get extraordinary Social Security disability checks. That has since been closed up and tightened. So they're fortunate for the rest of their life to get these massive payments, but we'll never see those again. I think there is a cap on this stuff probably in the mid-2000s. So anyways, you see your AMIs here. And so $9,000 per person. And again, you would want to check for your own city and state for that just to see. And then you do your summary. So you need to prove who everybody is. They're going to want to know whether or not you've got people in there that are sexual offenders, stuff like that. That's the purpose. Look, this is not an option. I have clients that believe they don't need to give out anything personal. You don't give it out, you get nothing, okay? They're not going to play with you. They don't care about your privacy rights. You're asking the state and the county to step in and to assist you. And so you either provide them what they want or you get nothing. There's no two ways about it. You cannot be a sovereign citizen. Or if you're suffering from delusions, then you'll need to get medicated so you'll be able to get through this application. I'm just being serious because a lot of my clients do have mental illness and they don't often see things in a reasonable way. And so beyond that, you'll have employment down here. And employment means, and they really should frame that word as not employment, but income. Do you have any, is anything being paid to you? So it's not just employment. I got to tell you, my vocal cords are getting tired. I'm sure your ears are starting to burn at this point. Hopefully, we're getting near the end. Depending upon the current housing circumstance, you may qualify for a preference. Now, this is an excellent part. Anytime you hear the word preference, it means these are the things that will greatly persuade whether you go high or low, whether you get or you do not get vouchers, all right? So, please review the housing situation described, blah, blah, blah. So, as I had mentioned, like clockwork, you see down here, homelessness. And then we look, living in cars parked sideways, abandoned buildings. That is the perfect answer. Living in a homeless shelter, yes. Living previously on the street, but now living in a transitional housing program, that will get you eliminated. Homelessness, but living for no more than 30 days in a hospital and institution, that will get you eliminated, okay? So there's two winners and two losers. The upper two, A and B, if you will, that'll get you. These two here will eliminate you. Chronically, look, if you don't check chronic, you're not going to get either one of these. This will disqualify the first set of questions. At risk of homelessness. Now, this is like what we call the second grade of giving you some light preference. Now, if you're at risk, about to lose, usually within 14 days of losing your apartment, you maybe you've been served an eviction, 3-day notice to vacate, and so on, then you can utilize this. And I believe in Louisiana they're saying 30 days. So I'll let you take a look there. Hey, look, guys, anytime you need to read this, you'll be able to rewind the video and also find the link in the description. I should have said that 30 minutes ago, right? So, so if you're being evicted or foreclosed on within 30 days of a private dwelling, no subsequent residence has been identified. And you notice how they put that, subsequent residence hasn't been identified. What about I told you about proving whether or not you have a mortgage or a lease? I'm right on the money every time with this stuff. So, moving on. Households fleeing domestic violence, housing situation, same thing. Households untenable and doubled up arrangement. In other words, you got a lot of people living in one house, and some of which should not be there. And so, untenable absolutely means unlivable, and they find their own reasons for that. And of course, that could be applicable to situations where the housing may be falling apart because of natural disaster, hurricane. Anytime FEMA's involved, the American Red Cross, and so on, then that could be the situation. So I would encourage you to read more there because it's a bit exhausting reading these paragraphs. All right, so I'm going to move on. Households including persons in the existing mental health facilities, developmental disabilities, nursing homes, residential addiction treatment centers, hospitals, and no subsequent residence. So in other words, coming out of any institutionalization, including jails, mental hospitals, and nursing homes, this would be applicable. And you can see there's a long checklist here, and I'm going to let y'all just read that. So guys, I'm going to wrap up this video. Now I realize there's more pages, but I got to tell you, my voice is becoming strained, and I believe we can all read what it is. If you have questions about this program, you're welcome to contact me or set up a consult. I think that I've given you plenty. I'm just going to check and see how many more pages there are. It's quite extensive, as you can see. Yeah, we would be in a 3-hour video trying to cover all this, so I'm not. So I'm going to have y'all review it, okay? And I apologize for cutting it short, but I mean, it would be an extraordinary video if I had to go over all of these. So any questions that pop up, you're welcome to ask me, contact me, or book a consult with, and we'll go over the rest of that. Also, just try reading this stuff. It comes down to elementally whether or not you're giving those correct answers and understanding what they mean. And then remember that the worker will also verbalize these to you, and if you don't give out an appropriate response, this could hurt or hinder you in the process. I've enjoyed very much talking with you guys. You're welcome to watch the more than 200 videos I've made. You can also find my web address down below. You can find a separate link that can book me from either the website or an independent link. And then I wish you all a good day. Thank you. Goodbye.